Hi guys, in this episode I'm going to show you the top 5 mistakes designers make and how to fix them. Hi guys and welcome to Kelvin Designs. My name is Kelvin and I design. That's why it's called Kelvin Designs. Click right here if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel and get all these free tutorials as they come out. And click right here to get the source files to this episode and every other episode that I do. By signing up to the newsletter you get access to a bunch of files and cool stuff. Alright, so in this episode I'm going to show you the top 5 mistakes that designers make, and whether this is in photography related designs or just straight up design for campaigns, billboards, or anything like that. These are the biggest mistakes that get done, and with very simple fixes suddenly your design goes from amateur to a low-end design to a professional design. It's very simple, you just need to know them and how to fix them. It's very simple stuff. So let's get started.
Alright, so in this episode I'm going to show you how to avoid the 5 biggest mistakes of design and eventually how to fix them. To get the files to this tutorial, just go to my website kelvindesigns.com and click on sign up, put in your name and email, and you will get access to this folder here and all the other episodes. But in this episode we're dealing with this Illustrator file and all the links and fonts that go with it. And it opens up this. So I'm going to go over the 5 biggest mistakes that designers make and eventually how to fix those or how to improve those. This does use some fonts, so if you do not know how to install fonts, my first episode in the series, which you can find on my YouTube channel, covers how to install and manage fonts. Alright, so once you have that downloaded, you can open it up. And the first thing is bad white space. This is probably the most violated rule in design. And basically what that means is white space is spacing that you have between the edge of a page or an ad and objects, and between objects themselves in the ad. So in this case it's very obvious. This one gets chopped off, it's too close to the edge. But sometimes, unfortunately, you do see copy that's right on the edge and you have so much text to put somewhere and you're just trying to squeeze it in. So this obviously is a mistake, and while you could also just bring it up here, it still violates white space because what you want to do a lot of the time is have even or balanced white space. What that means is if I take my rectangle tool here and I say, okay, I want to make a square from here to here, just to get an idea of the spacing. Close this. And if I take this block, it should be the same size over here, which you can see it is not. So the spacing on the top is actually less than on the left and right. While that can work sometimes, when it's so close, it actually looks like a mistake. And the interesting thing about these top 5 mistakes is that a lot of the time someone who's not a designer will just say, well, I don't really like it, I don't really know why. And most of the time it's because it violates one of these 5 things. So here someone could say, well, I don't really like the placement of this, but I can't really put my finger on why. Well, a lot of the time it's the white space that's off. So here and here, and the same thing goes here. If you do want to have objects down here, it's good to respect that equal white space all over the place. And while you can have bigger white spaces, like you don't have to have the same exact, it doesn't have to be completely geometrical and symmetrical, but you do want to have good white space. So for example, the space between here would be nice to have the same as down here, and so on and so forth. So white space, bad white space is a pretty good example. And I'm going to delete that little rectangle. And here's an example of improved white space for the same ad. So you can tell here there's white space. Now again, this is not it's not perfectly aligned. You can tell that there's more space here than there is here. And while this is not actually a perfect representation of white space, it definitely has an improved white space. And I could actually go in here and make it even better. So what I oftentimes do, and many designers do this, they make a copy of this little block that they have for spacing, and they want to see, well, okay, how am I looking? I'm not exactly centered, so that's not a good thing. So I'm going to take this, for example, this object right here, and I'm going to move it a little to the left, and I'm going to make it just a little bigger, something like this. Now I did go past it, but it's really the asterisk, which, in my opinion, does not go in this block. Something like this, and then now this needs to be censored on this, so I select them both, and then I select this one over again. You can see this became the key object. It has a double outline, so when I censor it, it'll censor it based upon this. And now I have better spacing. Now again, the spacing over here and the spacing down here seems a little off. It doesn't have to be even all the time. This is more to do with this than it has to do with this object. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and at least keep that same margin below the word October and just bring this down a notch, something like this, maybe one here like this. All right, so now when I delete these blocks, it should actually look better, and it does. My spacing is a lot better. The white space is much better. And I could do the same thing for here. I'm not crazy about the white space right here compared to here and here. I would even that out. And another way of doing that is to simply, let's just select this cup here, shift click the background and not take that. I don't want this. I took there we go. Okay, and I can actually just Command G to group that. And I'm just gonna take this a little bit smaller, bring it down a notch. And I'm trying to see, okay, most of the time you can just eyeball it. It doesn't, if it's a hair off, it's not great, but you can get away with it. So here I'm going to make it even smaller, bring it down just a little bit, and I'm a little too low. So I want to have this space that's pretty much even to this, which is pretty much even to that, which is not totally the case, but pretty close. A lot better than when we started. Okay, so I'm pretty centered there, and so that's white space. That's a very key point, and you want to have objects that flow nicely and relate nicely to one another, and that is dealt by having nice, good white space. Okay, and the second one is bad fonts and colors. Now you see this a lot with very beginner designers. They go to these free font websites, and it has a gazillion fonts, and they seem really cool, and there's all these hand brushed and effects on them, and they look grungy or whatever. And this is probably the biggest mistake you see from beginner designers. And the problem is they're trying to supplement a good layout and a good design with fonts. And most of the best fonts are very simple. In fact, you could get away with doing 99% of your fonts with about 20 fonts tops. And those fonts are the ones that are mostly used. Examples of that are Helvetica or Garamond or Berkeley, or all these fonts that actually most of the time come pre-installed on your computer. So here, the first mistake is too many fonts. Got 1, 2, 3, if I count this one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Much too much, making it, you don't really know where to look first. And the second thing is obviously the colors. I mean, this is exaggerated, but I have seen some pretty terrible use of color. But so this example shows you that you have 1, 2, 3, and then a bunch here, 5, 6, 7, 8. You got all these different colors, and you're just dispersed. You don't know where to look at. And the object of the ad, or any ad, is to convey a message. And anything that doesn't help that should be taken away. So that's the simplest explanation of this. And to fix this, well, it's pretty simple. Just tone down the colors. And so here you see, well, let's see if we can see them both at the same time. Let me just hide this. And, well, we can compare. Here we have the cyan, which we don't really need. The product shot, well, I'm not going to consider I can change that. We do have this sort of a light red and the green in here, so green is probably good, and yellow works with that too. So in here you see we just kind of have a gradient of green, but it's essentially a green. You really have a dominant color suddenly, and we've stripped away almost all the fonts. You can use different thicknesses or versions of the same fonts, and it doesn't seem like you got a gazillion fonts. But you still, here you have a thin version, and here you have a bolder version. In fact, this is upper lowercase, and this is all caps. So you do have some differences, but they marry with each other much, much better. And I think we're using the same font here, 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 and a thin version of it here. And again, we use the green and the yellow. Now, we didn't have to go with yellow. We could have picked one of these colors. I'm not crazy about this light red, but okay. This works as well. And black and white will pretty much go with anything. So you're really safe using that. And there you go. So that is a fix for fonts and colors. Try to strip back. Try not to use more than 3 different versions of a font or 3 different fonts, period. And in this case, we have a thin and a bold, and that's pretty much all we're using. And then this, if we count this. But this is a product shot, so I can't really consider it part of my layout. And try to minimize your colors to as few as possible. Okay, and then the the third thing is the design has too many subjects and objects. I see this all the time, and clients who come to me, they tend to, they have an ad the size of a postcard, and they have about 15 different things they want to say. They want to say how they're cheap, but they're high end, and they want to say how it's, a luxury product, but it's 90% off, or they want to say, you can get it now, but you can get it all year, and you can buy it all at once or in payments, and there's so many different things, and you're ending up with something that's completely chaotic, and you can't follow. You don't know what to look at. So we see this as a vacation time, an ad for flying, now offering discounts to the following exotic locations. You got a bunch of different locations, 50% off specific flights, and then flip the postcard over for more details. And it's pretty insane. Granted, there's a background in here that doesn't help, but you still, in terms of subjects or objects on your design, you don't know where to look at first. Perhaps the top, and then what? And it's hard to read. So if we go to a simplified version of that, it's vacation time, March 2014 discounts available for anywhere, and then details in the back. I would have actually modified this just for the white space rule that we talked about. It would be a little nicer to have it here. And I try not to keep things too close to the edge. So something like that. But again, if we compare, now this is much more simplified, and someone could argue that, well, you don't really see the destinations. But the truth is, you don't really see them here either. They're so small. You're trying to put so many things, and none of it comes through. You try to say 10 things, and instead of saying 1 or 2, and you end up not saying anything because it's confusing. Now, we could have taken one of these photos and made the whole background that, which we kind of did. You can see the pier here that was here. It's in the background, but it's very ghosted. And we could have done another version using the photo. I'm not saying the design has to be like this, but it's just to show you that if you have a message, the message is always king. It's really important, and you got to have a subject that's very clear, and you know where to look at. It's vacation time, discounts, blah, and then there's details in the back. Okay, so that's the subject, and then we have unreadable, hard to read copy, and bad leading. For those of you who don't know what leading is, it is the space between lines. And it's actually called leading because back in the day, they had rows of letters, and they had lead wire that would separate the lines of text. And they had different thicknesses of this lead wire, which would increase or decrease the space between lines. So leading is the space between lines. And unreadable, hard to read copy. Now this is very, again, exaggerated. We use the font that's not very easy to read, and I get this all the time where someone says, I just want it to be handwritten so it looks like it's artisanal or homemade or something, or very friendly. And the truth is, it's more important that they understand the message than it looks friendly. In the end, if they don't read it and they don't understand or get the message you're trying to say, then why bother putting the ad out in the first place? So, and you can see here, I've seen this quite a bit as well, where you have text that's either yellow or some very light color, and it's just hard to read. Sometimes I see, black or white text over an image, and there's so much contrast in the back, making it really hard to read. So the readability of your text is really, really important, and one of the rules that gets violated quite a bit. Okay, so let's take a look at this improved. So a font like this one, which is Lato, which is a free Google font, is actually really easy to read. Adding some nice leading, so you see the spacing between the lines are pretty nice. Now this is not a perfect ad. I don't like the white spacing, and there's other issues. The white spacing is off here, but it's to show you the improved easy to read copy and good leading. Again here, making the text nice and readable, and again the phone number, which is really what you end up wanting them to do, either go to their website or call the number. I would have made this bigger, but it's to show you the importance of not using crazy fonts and colors. Really, readability is extremely important. Okay, and then one rule, which is a really neat rule, is you should never have a line of text over 65 characters. That includes white spaces. So in the beginning, it'll look like, well, these lines of text are hard to read. You get to the end, and here there's only like 4 lines of text, so it's not even that bad. But when you get to here, you're so far from the beginning that you're like, wait a minute, where was I at? Okay, here. And imagine if you had 10 lines of this or 15, you would constantly get lost because you don't know where you started, which is actually one of the reasons why most traditional newspapers have multiple columns. Multiple columns actually work much better because a small line of text is a lot easier to read than a long line of text. And 65 characters is apparently the surveyed amount of characters beyond which it becomes hard to read. So in this case, this ad was just made pretty simply, and you have it's all lateral, meaning it's all horizontal. And let's see how we fix this. We brought the top bar, we made it vertical here and reduced the lines of text. And in the beginning, when you're doing this, you're going to actually be counting the spaces. And it happens sometimes. I look at a design I'm doing, and I'm like, well, these lines of text are pretty long. By how much can I reduce it, and how much do I have to? And I count all the characters, spaces, symbols, and letters. And you end up with something that's a lot easier. Now, this seems like less text than this does. And that is very simply because there's fewer characters on the line. So that's pretty simple. Okay, and it also looks neater. It's so much easier to design objects that of text that have fewer characters in a row. It becomes something you can play with. Okay, and there we go. Those were the 5 biggest mistakes and how you can correct them. So to start over, bad white space, bad fonts and colors, design has too many subjects or objects, unreadable, hard to read copy, and bad leading, and lines of text over 65 characters. Now, there are other mistakes, but if you were to just check your design and try to put in these 5 rules at all times, you would be in the top 90-95% of designs, because with those basics, you end up having a nicer design. All right, and there you go. I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please share it. And if you would like any other tutorials, just leave a comment, and I'll be happy to do so.
All right, guys, I hope you liked that episode. And if you did, please don't forget to share it and like it and leave a comment if you want a tutorial that I can do. And I'll see you in the next episode.